On October 31st, 2022, two posts went up on the same day, about the same game. One came from Cyan, the studio behind Riven, announcing it would finally remake its own 1997 classics. The other came from a group of volunteers who had spent well over a decade rebuilding that same game by hand, writing to say their version was coming to an end. And the two were connected. The timing was not a coincidence. It was the collision of 13 years of unpaid fan devotion with a studio finally deciding to build the game itself. The obsession only makes sense once you know what Riven was. Riven, the sequel to Myst, came out on October 31st, 1997, developed by Cyan and published by Red Orb Entertainment, a Broderbund brand. It was the follow-up to 1993's Myst, and it was massive. The market research firm PC Data, which tracked US retail sales, logged 147,182 copies sold in the first 2 days alone, and by its numbers it finished the year as the best-selling CD-ROM game in the United States for 1997. But Riven had a hard limit built into how it looked. You moved through it by clicking, and most of the time each click jumped you to a new pre-rendered still, a single computer-generated frame of a place you could not freely walk through. There were transitions and animated machinery stitched between those frames. So it was not a pure slideshow, but at its heart you were standing at fixed points, leafing through a stack of gorgeous, painstakingly rendered postcards of a world, rather than moving through it on your own 2 feet. For the people who loved it most, that limit became a question they could not put down. What would Riven feel like if you could actually walk it? If the island were a real, continuous, three-dimensional place you crossed on foot in real time instead of clicking between frozen views? For years that was just a wish. Then a couple of fans decided to stop wondering and start building. The project was called the Starry Expanse Project. Though many knew it by another name, Real Riven, the pitch was almost absurd in its ambition. A volunteer team would recreate all of Riven in real-time 3D, building the geometry, the textures, the lighting, the whole world, using the original game's still images as their main reference. They kept Riven's original music and sound effects. Almost everything you could see, they remade themselves. Your source material is a set of flat, pre-rendered frames locked to fixed viewpoints. To turn that into a walkable place, you have to reverse engineer a world from its own snapshots, reconstruct the shape of a room you can only see from one frozen angle, make intelligent guesses at what the camera never showed, and rebuild it so it holds up when a player strolls right up and looks around. And you do it in your spare time, for free, because you love a game from 1997. It ran for a very long time. The team traces the start to late 2008, and by the end they described it as roughly a 13-year project. Along the way, they migrated between game engines as the technology moved and as licensing and limits pushed them, rebuilding large parts of the work more than once. This was years of a volunteer crew building, hitting a wall, and starting that piece over again. One of them was a technical artist named Nick Maurer from Adelaide, Australia. He joined in early 2011 and grew into one of the people steering the project. His name matters because he later wrote the most quietly devastating line in this whole story. By the late 2010s, the Starry Expanse team had something real. It was a mature, playable slice, well short of a finished game, but enough to show what a walkable, real-time Riven could look and feel like. But they had not finished it, and they never would. In August 2019, after that year's Mysterium fan convention, the team sat down with Cyan at the studio's own headquarters to show their work and talk through their plans. On one side, the small studio that had made the original. On the other, the volunteers who had spent years of nights and weekends rebuilding it. The collaboration itself was public knowledge. They announced it that year. But according to Maurer, the parting was not entirely the fans' choice. Around the middle of 2019, the team was, in his words, politely but firmly asked to cease development. There was no public lawsuit and no visible legal threat, at least none on the record. Both sides describe what followed as an agreement, and in the months after, the team wound its work down and handed the direction over to Cyan. What the public did not learn until 3 years later was that this quiet handoff meant the fan project itself was effectively over. So why did the volunteers stop? Part of it is simple. Cyan finally had the resources to remake Riven itself, and it intended to. The rest is the agreement, the quiet exchange that became the most misunderstood part of what happened. Cyan described it in its own words. The studio said it had spoken confidentially with the Starry Expanse team a couple of years earlier, and that, quote, "Together, we reached an agreement which allowed us to reference core pieces of their efforts to jumpstart our development." They referenced core pieces to jumpstart their own work. Cyan never said it shipped the fan game, and it never said it built its remake on top of the fan project. One of Cyan's developers later put it more concretely. They used some of the fan team's assets for measurements as reference points, and then built the actual game themselves from scratch. From the fan side, Mower has said their work became a large part of the foundation the new game was built on. Those two descriptions point at different things, and both can be true at once. Cyan is talking about what code and assets it did or did not reuse. Mower is talking about something harder to itemize, the proof of concept, the accumulated knowledge of how to solve this exact problem, and as it turned out, some of the people. The precise itemized scale of what changed hands was never made public, and it sits behind a confidentiality agreement. What is clear is the shape of it. A decade plus of volunteer obsession did not become the official Riven, but it fed into it. So what did the people who poured years into this actually get out of it? The honest answer is layered. As of its 2022 announcement, Cyan said it had hired one member of the Starry Expanse team onto its Riven project. But that one line, frozen in time, undersells what happened. By the time the official remake shipped, more than one alumnus of the fan project had contributed to it in official roles, and the finished game carries a dedicated acknowledgement, thanking dozens of Starry Expanse contributors by name. The team, as an organization, stayed independent. A number of its individual people did not simply vanish. They helped build the real thing. Nick Mower was not among those who joined Cyan. He watched the official remake come together from the outside, and looking back, he wrote the line the whole story turns on. Quote, "I always felt that Starry Expanse bet against Cyan and lost. That is the verdict of someone who gave years of his life to it. They had bet they would be the ones to deliver a walkable Riven. In the end, Cyan was, and yet in the same reflection, he called those years worth it, and not because of what Cyan built. He pointed at the people he had worked alongside, the things he had learned, the friendships. The measure of the project, for him, was never only whether it shipped. Those two posts from the opening share a date, and it was no accident. October 31st, 2022 was Riven's 25th anniversary to the day. That afternoon, Cyan published a piece titled An Open Letter to the Fans of Riven, confirming a full remake was in development. And on the same day, the Starry Expanse team published its own farewell. Their words, "Although our part of the journey has come to an end, the next chapter will be an exciting one to follow for all Myst fans. 1 anniversary, 2 posts. And the team has said it was given the chance to say goodbye publicly that day, which they used to celebrate the official remake and thank the community that had followed them, rather than to dwell on what they had lost." And Cyan delivered. On June 25th, 2024, the official remake of Riven released on PC through Steam and GOG on Mac, and in VR on MetaQuest and PC headsets. Built in Unreal Engine 5 with its environments and puzzles rebuilt from the ground up and expanded with new content. It has since come to consoles as well. Cyan itself was precise about what the new game was, a separate from scratch build. Not a port, not a remaster, not an update to the 1997 game, and not the fan project, quietly rebranded. The frozen viewpoints are gone. You walk Riven now as a continuous place. The original characters were rebuilt with a mix of new motion capture and performance, alongside some of the original voices. Lauren Gamiel as Catherine, Russell Webster providing Gain's movement, and Cyan co-founder and CEO Rand Miller returning to play Atris, the role he originated in the 90s. Cyan also revised a number of the puzzles for a mix of reasons the team has discussed openly, from clarity and difficulty to accessibility, and to keep the experience fresh for people who might remember the old solutions. The slideshow finally became a place you could stand inside and walk. None of what shipped in 2024 is the fan game. The Starry Expanse team never released a finished remake. They put out demos and slices over the years, enough to show the dream was real, but the complete, walkable Riven they set out to make was switched off before it could ship, and it is not coming. But look at what they left behind. For years, they had been the ones publicly turning Riven's frozen world into a place you could walk. And when the studio that made the original finally moved to do it for real, the fan team's work reached that effort in pieces. Some referenced, some as hard-won knowledge, some as people who ended up on the payroll. Under an agreement, neither side has fully opened up. They did not, in the end, get to be the ones who released Riven. What they did was spend 13 years proving to themselves that the frozen island wanted to be walked, and then watch the people who first built it walk it out into the world. Nick Mower called that a bet lost. From another angle, it is the rare fan project that ended, not in a takedown notice, but in the thing it loved finally getting